Welcome to the Spiritual Sanctuary, where we come together every Sunday as a community to share spiritual teachings as both students and teachers of everything related to God, divinity, ascension, 5D consciousness, and the law of attraction. My name is Liza Dovgish. I am a manifestation mindset coach.
My name is Liza Gray. I'm a spiritual mentor, intuitive healer, and life coach. And as always, to start our episode together, I want to take 3 deep breaths to synchronize our energy. So on my count, close your eyes. 3, 2, 1. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale one last time. Take a deep inhale. And exhale. All right. Happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Spiritual Sanctuary. Today we have a very, very exciting guest. Her name is Whitney Abke. She is an intuitive healer. She's a Reiki master. She is a spiritual coach. She has an amazing podcast. It's the Soulish podcast, which everybody should go listen to that after listening to this episode, of course. Whitney, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's so awesome to be on your guys' podcast. It's so fun to be on this side of things. And so awesome to meet you two. You are both beautiful, beautiful ladies on the inside and out. And I am a intuitive healer and spiritual coach and offer Reiki as well. Which has really been awesome because it's very new for me in this new season, just something that I got attuned to in a couple weeks ago. And I felt like that very much up-leveled things, but I love to basically meet with people. And I feel like I attract people that have had a similar story to mine, which is dealing with the points of religion and spirituality and where they are misaligned and where they also are aligned, and then also really struggling with a victim mentality and trying to step into your power but not knowing what that feels like or looks like. And so I tend to really walk people through in spiritual coaching and intuitive healing that are in that place where they are wanting to step into their power and their authority and step into their purpose as well, and why they came here, and to discover that and find healing and freedom. So that's my favorite thing about what I do. And so, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing a little bit. I didn't know you just got attuned to Reiki, so that's really, really cool. So
Yeah.
What led you, because I know that you've been doing energy healing for a while, and I know that when we were on our call, you were telling me that you've done it or kind of done healing work within the church too. So like, how has that progressed from doing it as part of the church? This is actually one thing I was really curious about too, because I feel like in the church, it's like, oh, like we can't perform miracles and we can't heal, only God can do it. And so everything that's like Reiki or like healing works very looked down upon, like that's witchcraft and that's satanic. But then, and I don't know because I'm not within the church, but I feel like I've kind of heard like then that kind of healing does take place within the church. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, even though it's still happening through humans in a sense, I guess. So like what's the difference between then and now, and how have you progressed and gotten to where you are now, like getting attuned to Reiki and being the healer you are today?
That's a loaded question.
It is.
I wanted to quickly request for anyone that doesn't know what church we're talking about, if Whitney, you could just kind of give just like a little summary of what the faith we're talking about is, because church is a lot of different things.
Very general. Yeah. And I love all religions. I think all religion is a great foundation for understanding spirituality and understanding and connecting with God, source, the universe. I specifically grew up Christian, and to get even nichier, I grew up non-denominational, charismatic, spirit-filled. Yes, that's a mouthful. And so that just means that we didn't affiliate with any specific denomination within Christianity. And there are so many. There's Lutheran, Baptist, just to name a few, Nazarene, what's a couple others? The charismatic, Pentecostal, there's so many, Foursquare, I haven't even touched the surface on that. But there's also crossovers, and different ones. And Christians would typically say like Catholicism isn't considered Christianity, or Mormonism isn't considered Christianity. But I've had Mormon friends and Catholic friends who consider themselves technically Christian. So I think it doesn't really matter, but that's what I grew up in. And I grew up actually in a pastor's home. So I got a really interesting taste of religion, Christianity, and we were also technically in the spirit-filled category. So speaking in tongues, which is basically a prayer language that is a spiritual prayer language that it's a gift that you can get from God, but anyone can have it. You're not more special than someone else if you have it. But that was very prominent. I got filled with my spirit language when I was 7, because I overheard my mom praying, and I went up and climbed up on her lap and was like, "What is that? And why have you not told me about this? You've been keeping this from me. Like, you're connecting in a way I've never known. And like, why have you not taught me this?" And she's like, "Oh, it's my secret prayer language." I was like, immediately hooked. Like, I need a secret prayer language. I need God to know, like every little bottom depth, you know.
So how did that develop? Like, how? Because I feel like, I mean, I like that nowadays. I feel like speaking in tongues is kind of the same as light language, like within the spiritual community.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
like people just, it's like you attuned to it, and then it's like, bam, you're doing it. So what was that like for you? Like, how did that happen?
Attuned is a good word for it. I don't know. I think as a 7-year-old kid, I just had faith. Like, everything was fact. Like, I didn't have any limitations or restrictions in my mindset and in my perspective. All belonged to me at 7. So I was like, I want it. Give it to me. Make it happen. Like, you're my mom. You know, you have the power. You have it. So give it back. Give it to me, you know? And so I just asked, and she's like, "Okay, let's pray. Let's ask God." And I immediately started my prayer language. So I immediately started speaking right then and there. And it's actually been a real anchor for me when I have been devastated in life. And I don't know if you've ever gone through pain that you're literally groaning as you cry, and it's like guttural because you feel like like a pole just went through your chest. I've been there. I'm sure your listeners have been there.
Oh, yeah.
My prayer language has literally been sometimes the only thing that ends up like coming out of the depths. And usually it's just to heal the spirit, you know?
That is so powerful. I've never thought of it that way, to be that healing and to use as a tool. I guess because light language and speaking in tongues, and what are you calling it? You're calling it prayer language?
Prayer language,
that's
kind
so
of
beautiful.
Spirit language.
Yeah,
it's technically of angels and of men is what the Bible says. So it technically could probably be some ancient language. I've even heard people, and everybody is super unique. I've heard people clicking. And I'm like, that's like African, but you're like Hispanic, you know? Whoa, like, that's cool. Like, that's not like native to you, you know, in your origin. I've watched my dad, and this is why I think it is maybe true that your prayer language can be of angels and of men, or spirit and of earth, we could say, is because I've even watched my dad growing up. I think I was 12 or 13, and he spoke to a man in the congregation in his prayer language. What my dad didn't know was that he was speaking in Old Spanish, and it was secret. The
story as well.
Yeah. Oh, did he? Oh my God, that's so funny.
I remember he told us after we stopped recording, and I was like, "Oh my God, I wish I had kept recording."
We were like, we were so sad. Chills. We were like, "I wish we got this in the recording." But please tell us the story for those that missed it.
I will speak what he did not. So yeah, no, it was really cool. And that guy was actually my dad's security guard, like his bodyguard, because my dad got hit when we were actually here in Colorado when I was 4, Aaron was 2, and my dad had major back issues. And a lot of times when my dad would heal people, when he would actually lay his hands on people and people would get healed, some people going down would grab my dad. Just, it wasn't something that they were probably consciously aware of. But because my dad was in such a fragile state in those times of my life, those years before he got his second surgery, there was this really big guy that was just the hugest teddy bear and so sweet. But he didn't have like a great marriage. But he would help my dad out and protect him from getting taken down, because that would be probably really not great for my dad. He would end up really hurt. But my dad one time just spoke spoken his prayer language, and I recognized it because I knew my dad and my mom's prayer language really well. I knew like the types of phrases that they would say or the things that would normally come out. And when I just remember being a kid and going, that's not what my dad's prayer language normally sounds like. That's kind of interesting. I just noticed it was different, but I didn't know Spanish at that time. And it was cool because it was old Spanish. I don't know if it's like the people are going to kill me that are Hispanic or Latino on here, like the Vivir kind of, but I think it's even older than that. It's like, no one there knew what my dad was saying, only that guy. And that's what I think is so beautiful about God's source universe, is that in religion and even in our culture and society, it's a shame and honor culture, right? It's a sin. You're doing good, you're doing not, right? You're sinner redeemed, right? You need a savior in order to be okay. And so there's that, it's very, non-dualistic, but it's a shame and honor culture. And so if you're great sinning, at least publicly, then, you're honored in the church, you're respected, you're looked at and revered, and, but God forbid you sin publicly, then it's like, oh, that guy's not a good place. That chick is not doing great, and there's kind of that shame around it. And that was one thing that led me into spirituality and kind of walking away from organized religion. Not that I've totally walked away from my faith, but just those experiences. But I'll never forget that guy's face and how much he was able to receive it, because he knew that God wasn't trying to expose his weaknesses and his failures as a husband and as a father. That God loved him so much, the universe loved him so much, that she wanted him to know that he's seen, loved, understood for right where he is. He doesn't have to be any different, but he was also calling him up and telling him it's time to up level your life, right? It's time to step into who you are, step into all that you're called to be, and you can do this. And it was very empowering and encouraging. It wasn't shameful at all. My dad had no idea what he was saying until he came and told him, this is what you said to me in Spanish, by the way, that nobody else here would know because it's old Spanish. And so my dad was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. That's cool. So I've kind of grown up with stuff like that. And I've grown up watching my dad lay hands on people and them healed. I've seen metal dissolve out of people's bodies. I've seen deaf people be able to hear again. I think I even saw, wow, it was like when I was really young, like 8 or 9, someone got their sight back. They could see. I've seen back pain move out and completely healed. And that was always a struggle for me because my dad had back issues my whole life, yet he's praying for someone with similar back issues and they're healed. And so I always was like, why is that not like translating here? But I knew that it was God, source, universe. At that moment, I didn't have the universe or source in my understanding, but I knew it was God doing the healing, that we were the vessels. That was my understanding back then. So I never thought that it was, and even now, I've never thought that it's any different. I know that Reiki is source energy. It's not coming from me. And actually, if it comes from me, that's not good. Then I'm going to feel
don't need to use your own energy.
Yeah. I'm going to feel extremely depleted afterwards and need to do like an Epsom salt magnesium bath, and maybe some crystal stuff and all that and like really tune in. But I've always seen it as source, universe, God working through me. And so maybe in that sense, I kind of had a leg up as far as being or stepping into being an intuitive healer. Where intuitive came from was actually a really good friend of mine, because I didn't realize until this new journey. When I would minister to people, I always see visions. I'm very claircognizant, clairaudience, clairsentience. I hear, I see, and I know like really, really well. I've just always been that way. And I always just thought like, oh, this is just, like, I didn't know that I'm seeing something that someone else is seeing. So I'd like go into technically a prayer and I'd be like, oh, I'm seeing this, that. And every time they're like, oh my gosh, like, that's so me. That's like this, that. I never thought anything of it. And then when I started taking my clients into guided meditations, and it was actually a friend who booked an intuitive healing session with me. At that point, it was just a coaching session because I was just a life coach at that point. But I took her into a meditation and was telling her what she was seeing. Like, but she was like, "How are you doing that?" I'm like, "I don't know. Like I'm just seeing what I'm seeing, but I'm asking you, like, you see this over here and then this, and then someone's coming on your left and they're, oh, and he's old and all, and I'm able to describe to them what they're seeing, and they're like, yes, yep, oh my God, yeah, yep, he said that, yep, I'm leaning on his chest right now, yep, he grabbed me into a hug, like, yep, he's leaving, she's coming over here, and like and just everything, I'm able to see it. And I think that's because I'm able to walk with someone through an experience, maybe a soul journey, you could say, where we are going deep. We are addressing soul contracts. We're addressing vows that were made centuries ago in past lives. We're going into places that are maybe also kind of scary or unknown or unsure. And so there's kind of that safety net of having someone being able to be with you through that process and also explain and also help them, like, hey, accept that. Like, lean into that hug that your grandfather has come to give you, to assure you that you are held and you are being watched over. You are not alone. You are not invisible. And so lean in. This is your time to be with your papa again, and this is real. This is not fake. I'm literally describing him to you, and I've never seen him. I didn't even know he existed until now, So I think things like that just help people to go, this is real. This is real. This is my life. I am seen. I am heard. I think it assures people that it's not just some fake fantasy like guided meditation that we're going into. No, you're experiencing this and this and that. And I've had people have, one client, she dealt with such trauma. Oh my God, she was pimped out by her mom when she was 12 on AOL chat rooms.
Wow.
Forced to go on dates and have sex and all that kind of stuff. And her mom just wanted her to hear the experiences. There was even no money exchange. She wasn't pimping her out for money. She was pimping her out for the stories, So this poor woman from like basically puberty was basically just used, right? She just was something to be used for someone's benefit and pleasure, and right. And so she had such a lack of value, but what that had done for her was she had a heart of stone to protect herself. And she actually got that in one guided meditation and said, look down at your hands. There's something just went into your hands. She goes, I feel it. It's really heavy. It's like, that's okay. That's all right. Just go ahead and look at it. It's significant for you to look at it. Look at it. She looks down and she's in the meditation. So this is all in spirit and soul. And she looks down and it's literally in the shape of a heart, a stone. It's huge. It's like in her hands. It's heavy. She can feel the weight of it. And I was like, okay. So that's what you have. That's what you're carrying around because of everything that you've experienced. Doesn't that feel right to you? Does that feel right to you?
Chills.
And I said, okay, so this is what God wants you to do, because she aligns with God. So we spoke on God terms. God wants you to give this to him. He's going to give you a new heart. So just go ahead and drop it. She dropped it, said, okay, now bring your hands back together. God's going to give you a new heart. She looks down, straight up, the most beautiful shaped, perfect heart. It was light. It was airy. And I said, put that into your chest. She went ahead and put it into her chest.
Wow.
She felt the shift. Like immediately she shifted from victim to victor, from disempowered to empowered, from not valued to valued by God, right? If she gets her value from anyone and anything, she knows she's valued, seen, loved, heard by God. And those are experiences that, guys, I cannot ever walk away from. I can't ever forget.
Of course.
Oh my God.
I've just realized like there's so much more than just my journey, right? It's so bigger than that. People's lives are at stake, right? People's journeys are changed by just the fact that I've been gifted with this, cool, but this is also for everybody. Everybody can step into some level of the clairs. And some people I have clients that are way clairaudient. like they have like that ability to like hear people's thoughts, and that is a gift, you know. But I think we're all technically the clairs. It's just some of us are probably more attuned to one or the other. But I actually experienced Reiki for the first time before I moved to Colorado, and I realized, you know what, this is an up leveling that I'm just ready for, and I want to get attuned. And I had in Reiki 1, it wasn't such a significant attunement moment, but in Reiki 2, I had the most insane, I couldn't even come off the floor. I heard my instructor saying, okay, everybody sit up. I'm like, I can't even move right now. But I had a Native American chief, because I'm like 1/8 Native American, and I align with that for some reason. And I've had a few past life experiences being Native American, so I know my roots are probably deep in there. I've probably had several lives as a Native American. But this chief came up to me. He looked like he was not messing around, and he just did this. He's like, put out your hands. So I put out my hands. He slapped my hands. When he did that, I felt electricity go through my entire body. And when you're going through the attunement process, they tell you, put on socks, right? Put on a blanket because you get cold. And I started profusely sweating. I was like, oh my God, like I'm on fire. It was, and there was so much more to that as well. But I was like, I just majorly up leveled in energy and feeling
incredible.
Like for real.
So tell us a little bit about that progression that happened, because you know, Aaron told us a little bit about his progression from like going from just kind of looking at the beliefs that were being presented in the church and just kind of a lot of the contradictions. And obviously I don't want to compare you guys, but you have a unique background of being pastors' children, right? So I wanted to see what was happening for you, your thought process as you were going from being very deep into that faith and then transitioning to where you are now.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that. So I pursued ministry hardcore. Like when I was 16, I would sit on the roof and ask God, what am I called to do? Like, what is my purpose? I know I'm supposed to help people and love people, and I so badly want to do that. I just don't know how. So I've always been asking for the call. And I ended up going into ministry school, Christian school, for college, and got my BA in practical ministry, focusing in on youth ministry because I love junior hires and high schoolers. Oh my God, favorite age. And started immediately after I graduated, I became a youth director as well as leading worship full time. Aaron and I grew up in a really musical family. So Aaron sings, so you can ping him on that and go, hello, why don't you play a little strumma guitar?
I'm using that
for me
from now on.
There you go. There's some ammo for you. That's some blackmail for you. He'll thank me later for that. But we both sing. I actually did a full-length album that was self-produced. And then I have a single that's out in the universe called Fight for You. So you can look that up.
I think I heard. Didn't you post it to your story the other day?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I caught a little snippet of that. It sounded really, really good. I was like, oh my gosh.
I need all the songs immediately right after this. We're jamming out.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Yeah, I wrote that song, and it's so like my life, because it's the whole thing of like, I'll fight for you and never give up. You know, I will go to like the deepest, darkest place with you and pull you out and just hold space for you to feel the love, you know, and drink it in. Those are all part of the lyrics of that song. And so I love it. I feel like that's like the song of my life. And I know that people that have heard it have felt so like, I got this, you know, and they feel like they can sing that over someone in their family that has had cancer or disease or something. And that's something that's like their heart song for them, you know, of like, I'm always with you, and I'll fight for you and fight for us. And so I grew up and really just from a young age have always been sensitive to God and have always really wanted a relationship and a connection. So that's kind of been a constant. And for Aaron as well, Aaron has always been really sensitive to God and really sensitive to that voice. And both of us have always been very like our eyes are open. We've seen angels, demons. We've had major experiences in the spirit world and all of that. And so it's not a shocker that Aaron can astral project. Although I'm still kind of like nervous to do that because I'm like, oh God, like I've heard his stories and I'm like, I don't know what land I'll go to, but I'm not sure if I want to go there yet.
I remember, so the first video of his that I watched that's how I like stumbled upon his channel, was him talking about astral projection. He was like, oh, how to astral project. He explained it and he made it sound so simple. And I was like, I think this is one of those things where like he's gifted, you know what I mean? He's just like, oh yeah, like this, you just do this, this, and this. It's like 3 easy steps and you're astral projecting. And I was like, I don't think that it's gonna feel
like,
that
I'm not
easy.
sure about that, Aaron. I don't know about that.
I think it's like, it's right, but I was like, it sounds like, I think it would be a lot harder than like, he's making it sound like I could just go upstairs right now and put my headphones in and like go travel. But I mean, he's definitely like, you guys are so gifted. It's incredible.
I think we've really been immersed in a very spiritual environment from birth, basically. So I think we just have that. There's no doubt. I think, and that's the hard part about astral projection, is believing and trusting the process and knowing that nothing bad can happen to you. I think that's like part of it too, because there's that fear. And I know people have that also with hypnosis. Like there's that fear of like, will I totally be out of control and not be able to like come out if I want to come out of it? And it's just not true. Like when you're in hypnosis, you're still fully in control. But if you haven't experienced it, it's hard to say that, it's hard to know that. And so I think astral projection too, there's so many different beliefs around it. And, can something or someone else inhabit your body while you're, technically your energy body has left your physical? Are you still technically tied to your body? So there's a lot of things around that. And Aaron has taught on that, but yeah, I think there's just things like that we just are more, we're just able to do. But as far as my journey, I basically stepped into church leadership roles, and some of the really like big moments where I felt rocked and like something doesn't align here. It doesn't feel right, yet I feel obligated to do this. And that was when I actually managed a house with 9 other women. So it was 10 women in a house. And it was like was it a 4-bedroom? I think it was a 4-bedroom house. And we all had twin beds and things like that, and bunk beds that we slept in, and only 3 bathrooms, but one was like a half bath. So not even a full bath. So we're like switching out showers, keeping the water running, that kind of thing. It was actually super fun to be surrounded by women, but I had to let go of the fact that my jewelry was going to get used and someone was going to pick up my favorite sweater and without asking. And that was just a part of it. So it was a good process for me to let go. It was a little tight, but I think as I was managing these women, I actually had to step in because of something that had gone down within the previous leadership. And it was already hard because I'm already coming in and basically taking over, yet no one can know why. And so there's a lot of shame in the air with the 2 girls that needed to get removed from the leadership, but they were allowed to still live in the house. And so it was really, really difficult, and it was not fun. And I came in as just like, I'm coming in just to hang out and be a part of this because I want community. And then they're like, we need you to step up. So I actually had to move rooms and leave my roommate, but nobody can know why. So that was kind of a moment where I was like, this doesn't make sense. Why can't we just talk about it? Because actually that would be a great teaching moment for everybody else. But it was the whole, we don't want to cause shame, around the sin. But I'm like, but we're sisters, like, and we're supposed to surround each other and support each other, yet we're being told we can't, and I'm in leadership, so I know what's up and I'm holding space for these women, but I'm not allowed to say anything. So it was just like, this doesn't make sense. And so what it did was it actually caused a huge rift between me and all the women. Now they don't trust me. Now they're like, oh, she meant to do this the whole time. Like she meant to usurp, right? and because women, we're crafty, right? And we're all like, we got our feelers out all the time. So like these women know, you know, it's like awful trying to like navigate this. And I just like leaned on my intuition and what I felt was right the whole time. But I knew immediately I was now on the outs with these women. And now I was prevented from having actual real friendships with them. And now the sisterhood that I really, really wanted to be a part of, I no longer could be a part of.
That's so
That
heartbreaking.
sucked.
I
Yeah.
feel that for you, because I've been in situations like that where you just really want to feel connected and supported, and yeah, it just sucks so much. Like, I'm just thinking of times that that's happened to me, where you really find yourself in this environment of being surrounded by so much love, and then just like feeling on the outside of it, or just feeling rejected. And oh yeah, that's a big wound for sure. I'm not speaking for you, I'm like speaking for myself.
No. And I think the sisterhood thing, like that's something that I think we've all experienced as women. We've all experienced the women that were not acting out of their power and authority, and they were acting out of their insecurity and therefore became bitches. And I've been a bitch too, so hey, hey bitchies. But like it's real, right? It's a real struggle, and it's a part of our journey and our growth process, as we realize, oh, I don't have to be a bitch to be powerful, or to put people at arm's length so I don't get hurt, right? I don't have to
100%.
respond that way out of fear of getting hurt or rejected. I don't have to self-reject somebody because I'm intimidated by them because they look like and act like everything I wish I was, right? It comes out of that
Right.
need of belonging and not feeling like you belong. So then you have to put someone down in order to feel like you're going to belong in that group, right? We all experienced that in high school, junior high. Like that was the experience, right? And even maybe in college. So it's okay. That's part of our journey and that's part of our development. But I think where we can get stuck is we can believe that that's the only way, because if it worked out for you, right, and you were queen bee and it worked out for you, then you learn that, oh, this is actually the way I can control and manipulate my environment and the people around me so that I don't get hurt and I can be happy and satisfied.
Right. And it's also like just getting energy from people, right? Like, I think James Redfield talks about this in the Celestine vision, or the Celestine journey, where it's like that every exchange you have with another human is an energy exchange, and one person's giving energy and one's receiving energy in some way, shape, or form. And so that's why people have these control dramas where it's like the poor me, or it's the manipulator, or it's there's multiple ones. I think there's like 5 different ones.
I know all 4. I tell my clients all the time. I was just talking to a client yesterday, but yeah, 100%. There has to be a symbiosis within that.
Yeah. So what was interesting about that experience as well is that I had a co-manager, and she had done something that is not a big deal, is really not a big deal, but in the church it would be. And it was considered a sin. And I actually just joked with her when she first confessed it to me, and she was crying. She was wrecked. She thought this was the end of everything. She felt totally shamed and like unworthy, disqualified, right? She was feeling all of that. So I responded in humor, because I was like, let's cut that. Let's change the mood, because that isn't serving you right now. And she was like, Whitney, and she starts laughing, and she's cry laughing. She's trying to transition. And I just assured her, I just grabbed her into like the bosom. It was great. Favorite place to put women is in my bosom, because I feel like we all need it.
Oh yeah.
And I have them, so might as well use them. Yeah. But just grabbed her and hugged her and loved on her. But then at the same time, one of my biggest regrets in that season of my life was I had and felt obligated, because I was told you have to go to a pastor with this because it's a sin and it's a particular sin. And therefore you have to confess it and bring it to light, because she's also a co-leader, co-manager. And that reinforced the shame. And even though she knew she was loved, she knew she was seen and cared for, and that she was not disqualified, that put the stamp of shame, right? Dishonor on her. And that ruined our friendship. We actually were really close friends. She was probably the only friend I had throughout the majority of that experience, those 3 years. I lost her at that moment. I'll never probably get her back. We finally became Instagram friends again, but we don't have any kind of conversation or connection. And I know why. So I just send her love and all of that. I know that she knows that my heart was in the right place as far as really wanting to just do the right thing. But it was moments like that, y'all, that made me go, this isn't right. There's something about this that just doesn't feel right. And I can't do this to people anymore. I choose not. I choose to walk away. So of course everybody was like, oh my God, where's Whitney? She doesn't come to church anymore. She's the pastor's daughter. Oh, but I walked away completely. I never went back to church ever again. I think I went one Sunday to Easter, and that was with my family. And that was it. And that was a few years ago. It's not that I don't like church or I don't like people, but I just immediately dedicated myself to a different journey. And nothing is better than another. There's nothing wrong with being a part of church or a part of a church community. It just has been my journey of kind of defragging and untwisting those ties that are around religion and sin and shame and that culture. And so, like, of course, sex without commitment outside of marriage, right? That's a big deal in the church, big deal, big sin. And I had been told from other pastors, male pastors, that the reason why my worship was so pure was because I was a virgin. So it's like,
that is so messed up.
Oh my God.
And
like you're not worthy otherwise.
It's ridiculous, but they meant well. They're coming from a works mentality that you have to do in order to be. You can't be and then do. You have to do in order to be, right? So you're always feeling like you're chasing after doing the right thing and not fucking up, because God forbid you fuck up and you have sex with somebody outside of marriage, and well, then you're forever fucked. Literally and figuratively, right. In the church. So it's like really hard. And I think I just, as a woman, my experience, this is not everyone's experience, but my personal experiences, and especially being in leadership, I heard things, right? So I know things about people that other people don't know. And I would know, like, the majority of the guys in this young adult group have had sex and are still having sex, like even now, and they're leading worship and all of that. Yet we have like an entire group here of almost all of the women are virgins. And then I would watch my friends who are virgin women marry a non-virgin guy, but he's a Christian, right? He's holy, right? He's not shamed. But any woman who it was known she wasn't, it was like shame. Like there's something wrong with you. And even how the men would perceive women that weren't virgins, it was like, well, no, I want a virgin bride, right? Like you're meant for that as a guy, but I have to wait for you.
I love that you're bringing this up, because I see this. This is funny because I brought this up. I keep bringing this guy up, this poor guy. But when Aaron was on the episode, I was telling him about this guy that I was seeing for a very, very short period of time. And he was like newly Christian. So he was just like studying the Bible, but then also just doing all, like, getting drunk, texting me at like 2 a.m. And I'm like, you're here telling me all about the 10 deadly sins and all these things, but then you're doing all these things. And so I kept being like, you're telling me these are your priorities and these are your values, but you're doing the complete opposite. And then he would tell me, he'd be like, I just wish you knew Jesus. I'm like, I think I know Jesus better than you, buddy. Like, Jesus and I are buddies. Like, I don't know about you, but yeah, I love that you're bringing that up, because there is definitely that. And I think the men, just as much as anything, like, I think that they feel that guilt as well, and they feel that shame.
Yep.
And the issue there is they're not allowed to express it, right? Whereas with women, it's like overly expressed, and then everyone has the right to pin that on you. And it's almost like this projection of like the shame they can't express themselves, they're putting it onto women. And then like women are having to carry all of that. Like that is just, the dynamics are insane there. And it's like all of us just need healing.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
the book, I literally bring this book up every single episode, but again, it's so powerful. It's Mary Magdalene Revealed. The author talks about how much church has impacted, or like, organized religion and the Christian faith, the dynamic between man and woman, how much it's impacted our society today. And people are like, oh, like, people want to say it hasn't, but it's like, where do you think that treatment of women comes from? Like, not even just women getting paid less, women having less opportunities, like women being raped, women being assaulted. It's like, it comes from that culture that's been going on for thousands of years, like literally thousands of years, where this image is pushed on us, where it's like the man, like Eve was the sinner, you know what I mean? She was the downfall. She is what destroyed everything. So it's like, and it comes from this place, which I think is super interesting too. It's like, when we talk about the story of Jesus and the time that he lived, it's this nice little fairy tale almost, where it's like, oh, and then, you've got the Virgin Mary, you got Mary Magdalene, and you watch these movies and TV shows and it looks cute and pretty, but like at that time, women were literally worth no more than a piece of property. They were like slaves. Like, even if it was your wife, that was essentially your slave. Like, she was your property. They had no rights. They were treated horribly and just used for sex and like cleaning the house and doing whatever women did at that time. And so that's the culture that Mary Magdalene kind of, like, she was Jesus's partner and she was one of the apostles, and so she was closest to him and she probably knew the most. Like, she understood his message deeper than anybody else did, but there was so much hatred and jealousy there, because it's like, for these men, they're like, why? Like, it's not like they were automatically just so holy and above that, right? They were still humans, and they still were humans with a human ego that still were products of their parents and their conditioning and their society at that time. And so for a woman to come in and be that close to Christ was very confrontational for them, because they were like, how could you possibly love this woman more than us? Like, she's a woman, like, she's worth nothing. Like, men are what matters, right? And so those are the people that our modern Christian faith is based off of. Those are the people, like, those gospels are in the Bible, that vision's in the Bible. And then however many years later, it was like the Roman emperor that decided, like, hey, this is the version of Christianity that we're going to pursue. And it puts the man on top and the woman at the bottom. And any evidence that goes against that needs to be destroyed. So Mary Magdalene's gospels were buried, they were destroyed, and they were secretly buried by some monks that were wanting to preserve her gospel, that knew that the message was so important that it couldn't be destroyed. And so that's just, at that point, that was created. And you can just see how that's bled into society today. Like, sure, women have equal rights, quote unquote. And like, I feel like people bring that up a lot, when we kind of talk about needing to take care of women better. It's like, oh, well, women have all the same opportunities that men do. There's equal rights now. Like, what else do you guys want? But it's like, yes, it's okay for a woman to be a man in this society, but it's not okay for a woman to be a woman. It's the masculine traits that are accepted, not the feminine traits. And there's still that huge difference there. And so I think we still have such a long way to go. And it's important to acknowledge the role that church played in that, and that we can't ignore that. And you still see it, like you said, your story just now, it's everything in society. Like, women are sluts and men are heroes, and they're cool, and
they're studs.
Yeah, whatever.
The sluts and the studs.
They're celebrated.
Exactly.
And I think there isn't, and I say this now from no criticism or judgment of men and of their journeys, because sex is a need for men. It's literally a need. They have a biological need. And if they, don't basically rein that need in and put it in, basically rein in, like, we have to rein in our emotions, right? Women can just be extremely emotional. And when we allow our emotions to just run the show, like men can allow their biological need to run the show, it can be destructive. And so I think what I wanted to just highlight was it's so difficult, because as a leader, I'm seeing all these things, and I'm seeing how, women are celebrated for being virgins. So then how does that make the non-virgin women feel? And then there's this whole thing on how you can become a virgin again. And again, it's all by works. It's not about being, it's about doing. And so I just kind of walked away from that. I'm like, I don't align with this anymore. And I don't want to look at somebody and say like, oh, you're going to hell because you had sex. Right? Like, I don't want to align with that anymore. And I don't want to align with the concept of hell and heaven either. I think this is a load of bull. And I've even, I just feel like if we say that, basically in the Bible, I think it was Onan and Tamar, that story where Onan spilt his seed, right? And then he was killed by God, punished by God for doing that, because it was basically a wasteful moment, right? Of life and creativity. So if we see that in the Bible, right, why would we think that God would do the same? So there's just so much contradiction. Why would God just souls right into being and into the universe and then be like, oh, but you didn't quite measure up, so like you're going to hell. Okay, you did fine, so you're going to heaven, right? And he's just like sifting through souls. So then some have no purpose because they didn't do good, right? And then others have better purpose, value, right, because they did good. And it just doesn't align, right? Like for me, I just felt like this, all life is precious, all life is sacred, right? Why would anything not be how can we desacralize one and sacralize another? That's the same thing with sex. Sex is sacred, period. No matter how you do it, who you do it with, doesn't matter. When you do it, it is sacred, period. It is an exchange of sacred energy, and you either exchange it with somebody and it's not a positive experience, not the sex, I'm talking about energy wise, or it's a positive exchange, right? And my brother has talked about that. He's talking more about that, which is great, because that's kind of an area that I'm kind of tuning out from for a while, like until like grow a pair to like get real honest with it. But I think I'm still growing, I'm still developing, I'm still stepping into things. I'm newer in the process than my brother. And so I'm really kind of in that point where I'm realizing, okay, I got what I'm meant to be and what I'm meant to step into, and I'm going to focus on that. So when it comes around to shame, whether it's someone has either like my client who had been, abused and used, or it's somebody that has come from a religious background as well, and they had sex or they were raped or anything like that. So then they deal with it kind of on a spiritual level, not that my other client didn't, but they are kind of coming from the framework mindset perspective that God did this to them, that this was part of their destiny and purpose, or they're not worthy of having been kept safe from abuse, from rape, from experiencing those things or being exposed to things. So there's a connection to God in that moment that I think those types of journeys, soul journeys, spiritual journeys of people, clients that they walk through, and it's a different type of healing, and you need to address different things in that situation. Everyone is so unique. So I don't feel like any client session is ever the same, but I see a trend there that we need to actually address questions around how they're viewed by God and how they're valued by God, not so much people or themselves. We have to do that too, but we have to really kind of start with the God factor, the universe factor. So, so I'm on a journey, y'all. I'm still there, and I haven't arrived yet.
I think that like even what you're saying, like, I mean, Aaron, I think you guys have different paths. You know what I mean? He's a teacher and you're a healer, and like, not that those two can't intertwine, but it's like you are like way over here on the path of being a healer, and he's way over here on the path of being a teacher, and that's perfect. Like, you know what I mean? Everybody has their own unique path. So I just have like so many kind of rabbit holes almost that I want to go down on. I know we've been recording for a while. Do you guys mind going for a little bit longer?
So we started like 20 minutes late. So Whitney, if
Okay.
you're okay with us going like another
I'm
15
like, I
minutes.
need a part 2 with Whitney because
I know this is such a
like,
good
like
conversation.
I need to
Our
keep
energies
talking
are
to
flowing
you.
so well. Like we're bouncing off of each other. It's
Yes,
that
yes.
sisterhood.
So,
So good.
there's 2 rabbit holes I got to go down. One is how I feel that it's like this is this truth that people know it deep down, because I've had a lot of Christians that, I don't know if you guys know that movie. It's called The Shack, I think. Have you guys seen that movie? Okay, so Whitney knows what to talk about. So Lisa, just really quickly, The Shack, it's this movie about this man
And a
who's
book.
and a book. Yeah, I just watched the movie, but it's based on a book. And it's about this man whose little daughter is kidnapped, presumably raped and murdered.
Yeah.
And he's so angry about it, it kind of destroys his whole life. And so then he goes back to the place that she was murdered at, and the place that they found her body. And so it was this little shack. And then
This sounds like the Lovely Bones part 2. It's like what happened after the Lovely Bones.
It's pretty amazing.
Yep.
But he goes to the shack, and yeah, it's the dad, exactly. He goes to the shack, and it's basically this transition from one moment to the next. He's walking through the trees, and all of a sudden he's in this new place where it's like spring and it's sunny out, and he sees the shack again, and the shack is this beautiful, restored cabin. And he goes in and he meets with God there. And it's God, and I think Jesus is there too, and maybe Mary. I'm not sure who exactly, but
Holy Spirit.
Okay, the Holy Spirit. Yeah. So he goes in there and meets with God, and God in this scenario is a woman, which I think is very powerful because it shows God as a woman for most of the movie, and then towards the end, God is a man, and so it shows
And a Black woman.
Exactly. So it
Which
shows
I was
that
the controversy.
a win, yes. So
Love
it shows that man, God is that female and that feminine and masculine energy. It's just an energy. And then there's a moment where I think is it the Holy Spirit or it's judgment that takes him, and it's okay if you want to be the judge, because he's so angry and judgmental, and he's like, if you want to be the judge, then go ahead and judge people. And he shows him his dad, and he shows him his children and all the sinful things they've done, quote unquote, all the bad things they've done. And the guy's like, I can't, do you know what I mean? Like, they're just human. It shows almost like the pain that they've been through to turn them into the person they are and the things they do now. And it's really that perspective shift where you're like, okay, judge them. Are they going to heaven or hell? And he's like, oh, well, I can't make that judgment. And it's like, exactly. And so it's this really powerful lesson. And I've talked to Christians about this, where they're like, well, God's a man, and they're talking about heaven and hell. And I'm like, well, don't you remember that movie, The Shack? And they're like, oh yeah, I love that movie. They totally resonated with the movie. They were like, it's so powerful. And then I'm like,
completely went over their heads.
Exactly. But it's like they resonated with it because they understood. They were like, yeah, that was such a beautiful movie. That's God, that's it. And then I'm like, but don't you see that it contradicts your belief? And then they're like, whoa, wait, hold on a minute. Like all of a sudden they're like,
women are less than because we're technically then not made in the image of God because God is not a woman.
Right.
Exactly. It's like these contradictions of that. I was talking to someone about it, and she was like, well, God's a man. And I was like, no, God's an energy. It can be masculine or feminine. It's like, no, God's a man. And I know that she loves that movie, The Shack. I was like, remember the movie, The Shack? And
Oprah's
exactly.
God.
And she was like, oh.
We all just agree that it's Oprah and it's Morgan Freeman.
She's just here incarnate for a little bit just to really establish things on Earth. She'll go back up to being God. Yeah.
So I think I feel like that truth is in everybody, right? It's like watching that movie and you're like, yes, it resonates, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, no, that doesn't line up with my programming. Hold on, let me go back to these set of rules. And then
seriously
and then the other rabbit hole I was kind of going to go down was, and this just popped in my head as you were talking, I realized this, because in both spirituality and religion, we feel this sense of validation, and because like God does not discriminate with miracles and gifts. Like you said, like anybody can speak in tongues, anybody can do it for miracles or for healing. And I think people both in the spiritual community and in religion take their gifts, quote unquote, as a confirmation that they are right. And so it's like in the church, healing takes place in the church, and it's like, well, that's God, and like everything's okay. And then healing takes place outside of the church, and it's like that's the devil. And then I've seen people in the spiritual community saying that the God that the Christians worship is actually not the real God. That's just like some lower demigod. That's like, I think it was this TikTok talking about how
People got some crazy
that
theories.
God's in like spiritual prison now, and that's why he's abandoned the people. And it's like this crazy stuff where people are like, well, no, but I am right, because like it's like that confirmation, right? Like the fact that they're performing miracles for them is like a confirmation that they're right. And it's just so funny.
Spiritual ego, and it
Exactly.
exists in every religion and every belief.
It's really just our own projections of God. Like, for all we know, and we've had this conversation before on this podcast, for all I know, the guy on the corner of the street that's screaming about the Ant King coming back and the Ant King is God, he could be right for all I know. Like, I don't know anything. You know what I mean? And that's like where you have to align yourself to. That's where you have to get yourself to really embody that unconditional love, right? To really just understand that, you know, you don't know anything. Like, I know what's true for me, but that's not true for everyone else. And it's just everyone trying to tell everyone what's true based on what's true to them. And it's like, no, that's not everyone's truth. Like, that's what we failed to grasp as a collective. And then that's why we're so divided and stagnant, because we can't understand that, like, everyone has their own version of what's happening, and it's all valid and it's all real. And we just need to love on people for being exactly who they are, whether we perceive it as being good or bad.
I think it's kind of, I have maybe a different perspective, and this may just be where I am in the process, but because I grew up Christian, there's one way, one truth, one God, right? That whole thing. So I resonate with that truth is not defined based off of experience, right? So I think that there's a bit of a, it's not scary because everyone's on their journey, but it can be something that can kind of, I guess, take you off course by focusing on what is true for you and being about your truth. Now, I know this is super controversial for me to say, but I think that there is something about truth not being defined based off of experiences, but us honoring our experiences and not needing to define it as true, because we constantly are experiencing things, and there are truths, sure, that come out of that, but not every experience that we have is true. Because if that's the case, then someone coming from an abusive relationship, or just not being loved, or not accepted, let's say they were never accepted in school, well, their truth could be that they are not loved, that they're not valued, right? That they're not good enough, and that could be technically their truth. So is that true? Because what I end up doing is redefining what they think is true with what is actually true, right? What is constant. And so I think when we say, oh, but that's not my truth, we then kind of alienate each other, and we put something between me and someone else by saying, well, that's my truth and you have yours, so you go do you. That's not me. Yeah. And I think that's actually not healthy, and that does not help us connect with each other. Instead, we can honor our experiences. We don't have to say it's true just because we experienced it, right? Because I think a lot of people experience things and they're like, they don't feel validated in what they experience. So then we have this new language that we're saying of like, well, that's not my truth, right? So I think that there's something here in society and culture and in the spiritual community and even religious community that we need to come full circle. We're cresting, the circle.
Yeah.
We need to come full circle with this, because truth is not defined by individual journeys and experiences. Truth is constant. Truth never changes. So we need to remove that maybe from our language and come into a place of a full picture of, but that's not my journey, right? That's not
Right.
my
Yeah.
experience.
I
Instead of
love
saying
that.
it's truth in order to feel validated, we can be validated by the fact that we've experienced it and this is our soul journey, right? Because even when you do past life regressions, you can't prove that that's true, right? You can't prove that you were Native American in a past life. You don't know, but you saw what you saw. You experienced what you experienced, and it resonated with you. So is that your truth? I think that's your journey. That's your experience. And yeah, truth can come into that and define that and bring healing and love and joy and peace and wholeness into your life based off of that experience. But I think when we separate ourselves, right, which is part of the 4D that we're coming into, that's a 3rd D mentality, is, oh, this is my truth and that's your truth. So we're separate here.
Yeah.
So we don't agree, right? So we're going to agree to disagree, but we're still separate. And we're coming into this 4D love, and we'll see where we are 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, where we stop saying that and we actually say, oh, I resonate with your experience. I had a totally different one. So I don't have the understanding that you have, but I'd love to learn from you and learn from your experience and hold space for you and bring that into my understanding and my knowing, so that way we resonate, we're connected, and we can understand each other, and we can be connected in a way that we weren't connected before. And I think that's what we're being brought into in this new season. And this new time is we're coming into full circle love, which says that truth is not defined based off of experience, based off of someone else's journey. And so I don't have to preach to anybody, right? We all know what's true. We know it in here. And we're just experiencing it and living it. And we're living the contradictions. We're living the things that validate what is true. But everyone is loved. Everybody is seen. The universe loves everyone, right?
Yeah.
Sees everybody. Everybody has a purpose.
That is, like, at the end of the day, the only truth and the only constant is love. And even, like, I think you're totally in alignment with what Liza was saying, even though the word truth is so subjective. Like, I know, just knowing her and knowing what you just said, I know you guys were basically saying the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's just there's the real truth, which is love, and that is the only truth. And then there's our truth, our experience. And I love that you said it that way. My Reiki mentor, so the one who attuned me, she always says it like this. She's like, especially when you're doing Reiki on people, or you're doing sessions and something comes up and you're like, this seems kind of odd. Like, why would I say this? I think for her, it was like one time, like the word pink flamingo came up and she was like, I don't like, I don't want to say pink. Like, it seemed weird. Right. And so she always says it, that sometimes what comes through may not be the destination, it's part of the journey. And so you may say to somebody in a session that, hey, your purpose is to become a hairdresser. And their purpose might not be to become a hairdresser, but maybe their purpose is to apply to become a hairdresser, because then while they're at the course, they meet somebody that's then going to shift them onto this new path that's going to bring them to their actual destination, their actual purpose, right? So everything is valid. I think it's more so that everything is valid, and it was real for you, but that doesn't make it the truth, right? That's just what you said. And I think A Course in Miracles touches on that too, where it says that God recognizes the illusion without necessarily validating that it's true, right? Without saying that he doesn't believe in it. He recognizes it, but he doesn't believe in it. So he's like, hey, I see you, I see you're hurting, and I see you experience this. I know that's not the truth, right? The truth is love, and you don't have to suffer, but I still see that you're suffering. So I think it's that key there. It's like almost we're having to redefine what truth is. And like you said, that is that moving into the 4th dimension. So I love that you touched on that and you went into depth on that.
So good.
That's beautiful.
I think every experience, every journey is so valid, and we need to learn from each other and be open to each other's journeys and experiences, because then we become wiser. We've been dealing with Black Lives Matter and that whole movement, and also just brutality around the police force, right? And I think those are things that I love, that it's being yelled everywhere, right? And it's a tragedy, and it's something that we need to bring back into right. But I do not know, as a white woman, what a Black woman's experience is. I also don't know, as a white woman, what a Black man's experience is. And I can never fully relate to that. I can sympathize, I can never empathize. But if I open myself up to their experience and to the fact that I'm ignorant in a lot of ways to what they experience on a daily basis, then I can learn from that as a white woman in this lifetime. And there's a part of that I can take with me in my soul journey. And it can positively really affect change in my life, in the lives of others, if I am called to speak to others, which I know in this lifetime I am. So I think in doing that, instead of saying, oh, well, that's not my experience, I think you're blowing this out of proportion, that's really not a huge issue, I mean, come on, just get over it. That's not true for me. I guess it's true for you. I'm losing out on an opportunity.
Yeah.
One, to love them and to say, I'm so sorry. Can I just say, I'm so sorry for your experience. I'm sorry that people that look like me have done you wrong, and I've hurt you in a major way. And I'm so sorry. That is not my heart. That's never my intention. Can you teach me about it? I want to know how to be sensitive and how to love the Black community.
Yeah. And especially
I think it's important. I think it's important for all of us to learn how to hold space for each other, even when the experiences we're having, like you said, Whitney, right? That's not the truth, right? That's so far from the truth. We have to be able to hold space for each other and acknowledge that, and really just help people heal by holding space, right? Because there's not much you can do even in that kind of situation, right? Like you said, as white women, there's very little we can do. We have to help people to, and I'm not saying that from a space of obviously we can help elevate voices, there's things we can do, but on an individual level, helping the people who have been so traumatized from that, there's little we can do other than just hold that space, right? And do the best that we can with elevating those voices and things like that. So I think that's a really good note.
As a non-minority, right, of being white, I have the responsibility here, and I take responsibility for being, I guess, in that supreme state, which it sucks. I don't like it at all. And I actually hate it. But I have a responsibility to raise people up that are in minority communities or in poverty or any, outside of the US too. That's part of our responsibility, is to love people and to lift people up. And so I know you guys feel that, because that's why you do what you do. And
Absolutely.
So we connect on that.
I think it's like very important too for the spiritual community to kind of dive into that and hear that, because we are in this place where we're like, hey, like, we recognize that suffering isn't the truth. But if you, like, how are you going to be a light worker? How are you going to be a healer when you're just looking down and you're like, oh, like, you're just living trapped in this illusion? Poor you.
You see the collective suffering and you just go, that's not real. Let me just stay in my high vibe all day long.
Exactly. So it's like, it's important for us to meet people down there, to acknowledge their pain, acknowledge their hurt, see them, witness them fully, so they feel safe and they feel seen and known. And then from that place, because you know the path to get here, but you can, like, if you're trying to hike up a mountain with somebody, you can't stand on top of the mountain, just be yelling down, like, just come up, like, hello, like, it's easy. Like, no, you go down and you meet them where they are and you show them the way up. And so it's so important for us, just because that pain and that suffering isn't the truth doesn't mean that we are above it, or that it's not valid or real. Like, we have to meet people where they're at if we want to make a difference and make a change. So I think that's really, really important. We touched on that.
And that's really important too. I wanted to point it out as well, because this is something we've talked about on this podcast as well, is healing the relationships in your own life and the difficulties you have with
Mhm.
your own parents, your own siblings, your own friends, right? Because that's where it really starts. You can't help anyone heal unless you're willing to do that healing in yourself. And most people only see it as a solo journey. They just think, well, I just need to heal myself and then screw everyone else, right? When that's really not how it works. When you're saying your mission is to help the collective, that means the people in your life too, right? You don't get to just ignore those issues and just kind of glide over them, right? And I know so many people like that, and obviously no
Mhm.
judgment to them. I know that they're going through their own journey, their own path, but that was what I saw in my own life once I started really just holding space for the people in my life, not forcing anything on them, but just holding space, like being the example. That's where I was able to skyrocket my, my own journey, and I feel so much more secure and just so much more happy that I get to just fully be myself with my family and not have to worry about, well, what do they think, or do they think I'm crazy or whatever, right? Like my dad and
Mhm.
I talk about crazy stuff all the time, and I just love it, So yeah, I think it's important to touch on it on that aspect too, where it's like, yeah, we want to hold space for for people who are oppressed and dealing with these things. But that
Mhm.
means you also have to deal with your racist uncle, right? That's causing that, right? That's perpetrating that. That means you have to hold space for him and send him love. And that doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, put yourself in the line of fire and like make sure you're suffering for the cause all the time. But it does mean that like you should do your best to even at least energetically send that love, because that person that's inflicting that pain is hurting just as much, right? Like, because
Mhm.
they're hurting themselves. That's what's
Mhm.
happening. Like, we're all one consciousness. So anything you inflict on another person, you're experiencing as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And we have to remember too that if you believe in reincarnation, we chose this life, this journey, our family, our friends, our experiences. So another part of that is someone and anyone, it doesn't matter if it's a racial issue, sexual diversity and inclusion issue. It doesn't matter if it's an abuse issue or a poor you've been victimized your whole life issue. It's all of them, right? We have to empower people and help them to realize, hey, you chose these experiences for your soul's journey
And
so that you
that's
can
hard.
learn.
Yep.
It's hard
100%.
because that whole victimization is something that I have dealt with my whole life. It's a real thing. It's a real struggle. But I like to empower people. I don't like to say you're victimizing yourself. No. They are real victims. Like their experiences are valid and are real, but they have a choice to respond. I have a choice to respond. And so I like calling people up into the response, come from a place of empowerment and not feeling disempowered or like a victim to everyone and everything in your life. You actually have authority over your atmosphere, over how you're treated, and over yourself. And you can choose how you respond. And I think that the Black community, Hispanic community, any minority community is realizing that and stepping into their power. And that's what we're seeing, which is great. And I think people generally are realizing like everyone is valid, everybody is valuable, and there's no life that is less valuable than another. And so the people that have not been valued in our society and our culture, we need to begin to value them and surround them. And so I think when you're talking around, spiritual leaders, kind of operating out of a place of spiritual ego, it's really out of a place of insecurity. Because if you have fully loved and accepted yourself, you don't have to speak out of your ego. Your ego is actually a point of safety, security, and and feeling valid. And so if you have to value or validate yourself based off of what you do and your success, then that's just a part of their journey that they need. But I think as the community and collective, we have to have discernment around that and and be able to pick up on the energy and not necessarily accept it. It may be that what they're speaking is true, but where they're speaking it from is just a place where they just need further healing and growth and
Yep.
development. And that's okay. We're
Yeah.
all there.
We're all there. We're all healing.
Yep.
I love that. Awesome. Well, we're coming up on the end here. Whitney, could you just share like one last piece of advice you would just want to share with anyone on the platform?
Anything particular?
No, just whatever you feel like people need to hear.
I feel really specifically that there's a question that's being asked, whether they're listening right when this goes live or they listen afterwards, that is around discovering their purpose and discovering how their life can have meaning. And so I just want to encourage you, if that's you and you're feeling that question of like, how can I do that? How can I step into what I feel is my purpose here? How do I have my life have more meaning and depth than just living the 9 to 5 and trying to find my person and make a family and settle down? If that's you and you're struggling because you feel unfulfilled, dissatisfied with life, and you're longing for something deep, tune into that. That's your invitation. That's your opportunity. Don't feel less than. Don't let that be an identifier for you in your life. Don't allow that to define you just because you're in the discovery process. Instead, take it as the invitation to have an adventure. And I'd invite you to just, even in your meditations, picture a door in front of you and get really specific with what that door looks like. And then go ahead when you're ready and open that door and step through. And just by faith, by belief, by knowing that you're meant for great things, step into that and just let that be kind of an initiation into the new season, into the new adventure that you have of discovering all that you are and what you were meant for, and allow opportunities to come to you and be an invitation to grow, heal, learn, and become whole, because that's what you're meant for in this lifetime. And it's all for you.
I love that.
Yay.
Awesome.
Thank you for that.
So let us know where people can find you. We'll also have links below for people. So Whitney, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, I have a website, whitneyabke.com. You can book intuitive healing sessions, spiritual coaching sessions, and I also have a combo intuitive healing and spiritual coaching session that's a little bit longer than the others. And that's a great session because you get to just do everything, and it's really fun and really deep. And so you can really address things in that session, which is really great. I'm also on Instagram at Whitney Abke. And then I have the Soulish podcast, which is also, the handle is the Soulish podcast. And you can find that on all major platforms as well as YouTube. And yeah, it's so great. So check me out there. Go follow me.
Go check her out. I love her podcast.
I love that.
All right,
One last question. We always ask this to all our guests. Who would you recommend we bring on the podcast?
Ooh, that's good. Ooh, I have so many good people. Can I say more than one?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Shoot. You guys need to have Yasmin Elsmore. You need to have Rita Ellen Merchandani, Sarah James Carter, Danu Vino, which was just on my podcast. He's amazing, and he's definitely in the spiritual community and came from Christianity, actually Hinduism, Christianity, spirituality. He's awesome. And Daniel, the past life regressionist, is amazing. He would give you such a cool perspective on reincarnation, soul journeys, soul lives, and all of that. And then Christine Rodriguez, she's a Vedic astrologer, and she has a wonderful perspective and can really kind of help your listeners dive into Vedic astrology. So it's really cool. Yeah,
those
are
awesome.
all my peeps.
I'm excited. I want all these people. Yeah, like you just sold me on everybody. I'm like, okay.
Like, okay, we're jotting down.
I'll send them to you. I'll send you all their handles.
Yes, please do. That would be really, really helpful. Okay, well, thank you so much for being on. I think that I'm gonna have to convince you to come on for part 2, because this was an amazing conversation. I love talking to you. Like, there's also so much stuff that you talked to me about on our call that I wish that we touched on today. So please come back for a part 2 with us.
Absolutely.
This is like our official invitation.
Okay. Here's awesome. No, but we have it on record. She's coming back for another one.
All right.
Thank
awesome.
you so much, guys.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. For anyone that's listening, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your Sunday. Bye, guys.
Bye.